So it's my huge pleasure to introduce Alan Murphy. Came to know Alan several years ago when I did an awesome photography workshop up in British Columbia at Lac Lejeune, and we photographed the loons, which was just amazing. And Alan is a great artist and, of course, a fantastic photographer. So he combines the two in exemplary photographs and an incredible workshop. Absolutely the most patient man and user-friendly. Not Alan. Alan's not user-friendly, but his expertise. Well, he's had, yeah. He's, I'm sure you read his bio, and it's very impressive, and I know you're going to enjoy this evening's presentation. So thank you all for zooming in with us. So I'll pass it over to you, Alan.
Great, thank you. Can you guys all hear me?
Yep, good.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. And since there's a few of you, that's kind of nice for me, because normally I don't get to see everybody I'm talking to, or do I get to interact? So I'm not sure if I'm the one that's supposed to unmute you, because it's asking me to ask you permission. But if you have the ability and you want to unmute and ask me a question during the talk, feel free to do that. I have more material to go through than the time I have for it, so I'm going to be moving pretty quick. So if you see something that you want to ask me a question, don't hesitate. And then if it's something I think will take a long time to answer, I'll do it at the end. But will that work, everybody? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get started. So you guys can see that main first slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to confirm that. All righty. All right, so I'm going to start out with, well, first of all, I guess most of you are photographers to some degree, either just a novice or good amateurs or whatever. So I'm hoping that some of this will relate to whatever it is you're doing. I'm going to go through the basics of what I consider to be a good bird photograph, but this applies to a lot of things, whether you're doing mammals or even kids or your pets. The same principles will apply. Of course, I'm talking about ideas that are mine. It doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. It's just my perception of what a good image is. So anyway, the first thing to do is we're going to talk about is when you get home from a photo shoot, a lot of people want to know, how do you pick the best image? Because you got so many that look alike, as you can see in this contact sheet of cardinals. You know, when I go on a workshop or a trip, I'll come home with, 5,000 images a day, maybe of 2 or 3 subjects. So there's a lot to go through. So one of the things with animals and birds, especially birds, that I look for, if you look at this image here, this is a reasonably nice image of a cardinal. It's sharp, it's got a nice out of focus background, it's got good eye contact. But the issue with this image for me is that he is ready to fly. It looks like he's aware of the photographer, okay? He's in a horizontal position, his crest is down, and the energy about that image to me is more about the photographer. It tells me that the bird is aware of the presence of the photographer taking it. So when I'm looking for an image of a cardinal, for example, I'm looking for something like this, where the bird is relaxed, his tail is down, his crest is up, okay? So now you can see that, you're looking at the bird in a relaxed environment, and there's no pressure on the bird from us. So now the image becomes more about the bird. So that's one of the things I look for. The other thing I'm looking for is eye contact, all right? So everyone has a different opinion on what that is. You can see this picture here of a rose-breasted grosbeak. And hey guys, if you don't mind, while we're talking, if you want to mute your microphone, that would be great. And then if you need to ask me a question, you can unmute it, because I'm picking up some background noise there. All right, so we've got, here's a rose-breasted grosbeak, and he's looking to the side, and that almost looks like it's good eye contact. But if you move to something like this, where the bird is slightly 45 degrees to the camera, his head angle, that is the better pose. Now, this is the same for your children or for your pets or for anybody you're taking a photo of. if you can create that energy between the viewer and the subject, it really adds a lot of power to the image. Here's another example. Here's a painted bunting that we find here in Texas. And he's singing, and it's a lovely singing shot. I've cropped it narrow just so that I could fit in some other examples of it. But you can see that he's singing to the side. The next image, you can see he's slightly turned towards the camera. That's the better image. But the really best angle is going to be that. Do you see the subtle difference? It's quite an important one, because the third image here, you can see that you can see into his mouth more. And that gives it a three-dimensional look, and it also shows you where the song is coming from. So that's really important. Now, here's an example of that with birds on water. This is a common mistake I see a lot of people shooting wildlife, and especially birds, is this green-winged teal, which is, it's a lovely, nice light, nice bird, low angle shot. If you look at the angle of the bird compared to this one, the one on the left, the bird is already slightly gone past me. So it's got a negative energy to it. He's swimming away, where the bird on the right hasn't quite met me. It's almost at the point where it's about to cross me. So it's entering into my space, and it's got more of a head angle that's facing the viewer. So it's a huge difference in the I think in the energy of the image. So when you're looking at, if you're doing stuff with birds on water and such, make sure you look for that, and don't pick anything that's already gone past the camera. If you guys ever do birds in flight, or if you're in Africa and there's mammals running, anything that where a subject is moving, here's a way to cull those images. So if you're looking at this image here, this is a European oyster catcher. He's in flight. It's a pretty good image, but as he moves in, it gets much better. So he's almost parallel to us. That right there is the position where he's just about to come in front of me. That is the strongest position of any mammal running or any bird in flight. Once they get past me, then the value of the image drops dramatically. And of course, it gets worse to the point where the bird's flying away now. I'm going to absolutely put those in the trash. But a lot of people continue to shoot birds that are flying away, or mammals. And the problem with that is, if you've got a lot of action, like when we go to Iceland and we're shooting puffins, there's one after another flying. And what I do is I photograph them. Once they're past me, I get on to the next bird, and then to the next bird. And my percentage of keepers at the end of the day is so much greater than if I'm following the bird away as he's flying, because I'm going to be throwing all those away. And just to make this even more clear, if I was to score this out of a 1 to 10 to give them an actual rating, then that first image is going to be an 8. It's not a throwaway image. It's certainly well worth keeping. Then it goes up to a 9. And then that position there is a 10. Okay. Now, once it goes past you, it drops immediately down to a 5. So I wouldn't even, if you're photographing a gazelle or something, whatever it is you're doing, or your dog running through the park, you definitely want to, once you get past that, then it's got a negative energy to it, because it's almost like the bird is rejecting you. He's flying away. It's like as if your kid's trying to take a picture of them and they're got their hand up and they're moving away. So there's the 0 right there. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to move on to how you crop your images and composition. And of course, you may know this already, but I'm going to go over just some basics of this. So when you're placing a subject in the frame, you kind of want to use what we call the rule of thirds, which is when you divide the frame up into 3 equal parts, and you draw a line down there, you want to place your subject on one of those lines, okay? Either left or right. Now, in this particular case, this is a summer tanager, and I have him facing into the empty space of the frame, and that makes more sense. Now, if you want to really add power to your composition, then you would add another, vertically break it up into thirds and place him in the upper third corner. So now he's in the right corner of the thirds and the upper corner. That's just general, what we call rule of thirds. Now that works really well for horizontal images. So for vertical images, the same rule applies, but in this particular case, because it's a headshot, I'm able to put his eye in the upper third because the eye is so prominent. Anytime you get his subject like a headshot and you have a face or whatever it is, then the eye becomes the strongest part of the image. So you want to put that into your composition. All right. The other thing I look at, if you look at this, is you see the negative space in the background. It's kind of balanced. There's not any big, huge area of negative space. It's kind of distributed around nicely. So I look at the negative space as well. So here's another example of a vertical composition where we have a little chickadee, boreal chickadee, hanging upside down on pine cones. And I could go into lots of conversations on how we get these images, but basically we just smeared some pine cone and we get the little birds to hang there. And so we can already pre-compose our images before we even, take them. We know where the bird is going to be. So in this particular case, in a vertical, I've got the bird down on the lower third of the frame. Okay. Now, when you're composing vertical images, I've got the bird in the upper part of the frame, the upper third of the frame. But if you notice, he's dead center down the middle. You can do that with vertical images. You don't have to put it to one side like in a horizontal. So in vertical images, you can definitely put your subject in the center, but you don't want to put him in the middle of the frame. You want him either up higher or lower, depending on the subject. And in this particular case, we've got all these beautiful red berries. So I didn't want to crop them out, so we put them up here. Now, there are times when you can actually take your subject in a vertical and move him left or right. And that would be when you have something very dominant in the frame that gives it balance. Okay, there's a ferruginous pygmy owl from South Texas, and you can see I'm able to move the bird over to the right side of the frame. Hang on, I need to mute somebody here. Jackie, are you able to mute anybody? Don't worry. Okay, we're good. All right, so because the lichens and the branch is really interesting, I was able to use that as a balance in the composition. So by moving the bird over, this adds equal character to the frame, so that works. Here's another example of it. Here's a beautiful barred owl that I shot in Florida. And again, he's in the upper third of the frame, but he's also in the left third of the frame as well. So I've got his face in this really key point here for composition. But the way it works is because this bark, this tree is so gorgeous, it actually has equal strength in my opinion. So it makes for a nice composition. Now, there are exceptions to putting your subject in the middle in a horizontal frame. So here's a horizontal frame of a wood duck. And I'm able to place him in the middle. I don't know if any of you can tell why, but it's because of the cylindrical rings in the water. Okay, so this is a reason why if the rings in the water are circular, it actually contains the subject really well in the center. So I'm allowed to do that. To put him off one side would be kind of awkward. Now, if the water wasn't moving and it was really still, I could move him to the left. So he's looking to the right. But when you have cylindrical rings and ripples, then that takes precedent. The other example would be something like this, where we have, this is a razorbill flying in to land on the cliffs. And because he's coming straight at you and everything's kind of geometric, you've got equal wings on both sides. There's nowhere else to put him but dead center. And I had about 10 frames of this guy because he kept coming in. And I chose the one where his head was tilted, just so that it wasn't so, he had his little head tilted to one side, and that really adds a lot to it as well. Again, you can see the negative space behind the bird is kind of balanced. It's not top heavy or lower. Now, another argument for this could be you could put him higher in the frame if it looks like he's landing. So if I had a rock in the foreground, I'd put him higher in the frame, but I don't. So I just put him dead center. Here's another example of when you can put your subjects dead center. Here's two redneck grebes. And you could do this with any mammal that are interacting with each other. If they're facing each other and there is that interaction, then the power of the image is in the middle. There's no other place to put that. You wouldn't put that to the side or up or down. Now it is on the upper third of the frame, but the subjects are dead center because that's where you want that energy to be. And one more example before we move on. Here's a little kittiwake, black-legged kittiwake, but the composition of the rocks and showing their habitat where they live really highlights the bird. And I definitely wanted to give the rock equal balance and equal equity. So therefore the little bird goes right in the center. You see that? So you can break the rules. Now, with bird photography, you've got a, let's say you're doing birds in flight. You've got multiple shots with wings up, down, forward, back. How do you choose the best wing position? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So here you've got a red-tailed hawk with the wings down, and that works really well. Here's the same bird with the wings up. Now, of course, I'm panning and shooting this bird, so I'm getting lots of frames of them up and down. Those both work, right? What does not work is this, where they're halfway. And the reason for that is, I mean, you're seeing all this beautiful primary feathers on the bird down here. In the middle frame, you're seeing the same thing underneath, but here, you're really not seeing the glory of the bird at all. So we don't want to look at this as the most powerful image. These two are great. Now, how do you decide which one is better, the up or down? It really depends on the species that you're shooting, all right? So here's an example of a broad-billed hummingbird in Arizona that we shoot. So the wings are forward, here's one back, okay? Here's what we don't want, this halfway stuff. Really just does not do anything for the bird. Doesn't show the shape of the wings, the primary feathers. Now, looking at these two images on the left, how do we choose which is the stronger image? Well, it's different, like I say, for each species, but for this particular guy, because it's a broad-tailed hummingbird, if you look at all the iridescence on the stomach and the throat, absolutely gorgeous bird. But when the wings are forward, it covers that. So in my opinion, the center image is going to be the stronger image, okay? Not that I would throw this one away, it's gorgeous, but that the middle one takes the lead a little bit in my opinion. All right, here's some quick examples of a red-winged blackbird with his wings up, and then a red-winged blackbird with the wings somewhat down. Of course, this one's going to take the winner because it shows the red wings of the bird. That's what he's named after. So that's another example when you're picking images. Now here's a really obvious one. Here's a green-winged teal, and it's a lovely wing flap. I would never throw that away, but this one with the wings down shows the actual green teal on the wings. So there's your winner there. And speaking of doing wing stretches, okay, here's an example of, there's an American avocet with the wing stretch, and all birds do this. And it's really nice to capture birds. If you ever photograph birds, it's great getting them perched, but anytime you can add movement or some action in the images, it adds value. So sometimes I'll go out and I'm really watching for the wing stretches, but here's what you've got to do if you're going to plan for this. Here's an image of this is an actual black tern down in Bolivar Flats. They migrate this time of year, actually. They're about to move through here in September, and they're no longer black, they're kind of molting. But I noticed that when they're laying on the beach, there's dozens of them, sometimes hundreds. And whenever they take off, right before they take off, they stretch. And I noticed that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to sneak up on one and I'm going to wait for the wing stretch. Well, this is how I had to frame it. And you wouldn't think you have to. So you have to really allow space for framing, because look at that. Those wings are like just so tall that if I wasn't prepared for it, I would have cropped those wings off. So that's just a little tip on that. Now, when you're doing action, people always ask me, what's the best shutter speed for doing birds in flight? Well, this has changed over the years since digital cameras now are getting so good and the ISO on noise is so good. I don't know if any of you ever shot back in the slide days when we couldn't shoot over 200 ISO. This type of photography wasn't even possible. And now it's pretty incredible. So when I talk about shutter speeds to people, they're like, really? Yeah, these are the shutter speeds that you'd want to look at. So I just showed a quick example here. Here's 2000 shutter.
Alan, I have a quick question. What about iPhones? I mean, they've come a long way since phones have come and taking pictures like this on an iPhone. Have you got any tips for those too?
Well, yeah, I love my iPhone. I bought a little, really fancy professional camera for landscape that I keep with me, and I never use it because I take my iPhone out every time I see a landscape opportunity. They're not set up for action at all, but as far as, you know, for people, grab shots, and I could show you some landscape shots that are pretty stunning. And then we have great software now that takes out the noise and adds all the drama to the image as well. So yeah, I think the iPhones are, I mean, the iPhones have 3 times more megapixels than my first digital camera that I shot with 20 something years ago. So yeah, I mean, they're great, but not for action. So you'll never get these kind of shutter speeds with an iPhone. But what I was going to get at is you can see 2000 the shutter, these wings are still blurry. 3000, they're getting better. But I actually, if I have enough light, I will shoot at 8000 shutter. That's what the fastest your cameras can shoot at. Now, in order to do that, you've got to bump your ISO way up. But with today's technology, there's software to remove any noise from high ISO. So the key is getting the shutter speeds up. When you're shooting up at 5000 or 8000 shutter, now you're shooting at the same burst of speed as a flash. So you can get some really pretty incredible images like this. I mean, these are just, this is on, I got an Arizona workshop coming up in 3 weeks. This is where we shoot this. We set these guys up and we have them flying up, and we know it's gonna happen when we set it, but we have to be at 8000 shutter to freeze the wings. Here's a hummingbird photograph shot with 8000 shutter. Okay, no flash, nothing, just ambient light. But the key is getting the shutter speeds up. So I really want to encourage you to do that. And anytime you have animals fighting, playing, whatever they're doing, again, the shutter speed is so key. If you've got birds bathing, you may not need exactly 8000 for the bird, but you'll need it to freeze the water. So I want to encourage you guys to start practicing getting your shutter speeds way up there, because you'd be amazed at what you get. You don't necessarily see it in the viewfinder because it's happening so fast, but when you get home and you look at your images, you'll be amazed that the shutter speed will capture stuff that you couldn't imagine. Right, another thing is we want to include habitat. Yep.
Oh, so what lens are you using when you're taking those shots with a 1/8000th shutter speed?
Well, probably it varies, but mostly either a 300 millimeter or a 600.
Okay, so it's a fixed focal length lens.
Always, for me, always fixed focal length, and you tend to have to shoot what we call wide open, which is the largest aperture you got. So if you've got an f4 lens, you want to shoot it at f4. That will help you get to the 8000 shutter. Or if you have a 2.8 lens or an f5.6, you want to keep it wide open to that so that you can get the maximum shutter speed. But as far as the subject goes, I mean, the focal length is not that important because, you know, you get to move closer or further away. It's just, but if I'm shooting action, I'm always further away because I want the birds smaller in the frame so they have room to do their thing. So I was going to talk to you guys about habitat in your images. So I do bald eagle workshops every year, and this is very typical. We all come home with hundreds of these shots with the eagles coming down to grab fish, and that's wonderful, but we also want to try to do some wide angle stuff. So if you're trying to create a portfolio of birds or mammals or whatever, this will really enhance your portfolio if you can also do some wide angle stuff. So here's a scenic, and then to take it even to more extremes, you know, we got a beautiful landscape shot with the bird in the middle. And here's an example of, there's 6 bald eagles in that image right there, okay? And I'm sure you can see there's one here and here and here, but showing their domain, you know, the size of their where they live, it just adds a lot to the story of the bird. Here's another example of the loons. We do these up in Canada every year, and this is very typical. When the babies hatch, they swim around the mom on the back, and everybody wants that shot, and we get lots of those. But we also want to tell the story about the bird. So we also go out at 4 o'clock in the morning before the sun's up, and we go out with, this was taken with an iPhone. And we try to place the birds and get these beautiful sunrises. And then this was also an iPhone shot taken, you know, on a misty morning when the sun's coming up, and we put the loon in the little corner over here to show, you know, that's typical what people imagine about a loon in a misty lake, right? So you're trying to tell a story about your subject. So it's not all about just frame filling the bird. So here's another example. This is called a paraki. This is a nighthawk bird. They fly around at night catching insects, and during the day, they hide out in the camouflage. And what's really cool about this bird is that he knows that he blends in. So if he knows that, I want to show that off. So there he is again, if you can see him. I'm not sure how obvious he is, but he's over here in the corner, okay? And I totally broke the rules of composition there because he's facing that way. But for me, it doesn't matter because I'm trying to fool the audience. They're looking at that going, well, where's the bird? Well, there he is, okay? That creates the wow factor. And here he is even smaller, okay? So I took a wide angle lens, like a 24 millimeter, and photographed him up here. And just to show that you could be walking past this bird 5 feet and you would never know he was there. So I think that gives credit to the bird. Here's some more examples. In this image here, there is a dunlin chick. It is a shorebird, if you're not familiar with birds. And his little chick is in that image, and it's almost impossible to see. There he is in the circle, okay? So rather than zoom right in and show you the chick, it's really, I think, great to show the habitat because the parents know that the birds can hide there. So if a peregrine falcon or some predator is flying above, they never see the chicks because they blend in with the tundra. Here's another example. Here is a European golden plover in the tundra. Now there's an example. Here's the chick right here. You see the chick? There's the tundra. And they match completely. And this is not my hand, by the way. This is I got permission to use this from somebody else. But anyway, what's so incredible is that the adults know that the chick's plumage matches this. So here he is here in the tundra. I'm shooting this with an iPhone 2 feet above him, and I kept losing him because I couldn't see him. So rather than just photographing your subject, also remember the habitat that they're in that habitat for a reason. So try to include that. All right. Anybody see what's in there? You do? Okay, good. Yeah, there's a moth right there. See him? How cool is that? I mean, nature is incredible. I could zoom in and show you a really close up of that moth, but it wouldn't be as spectacular showing you how well he blends in with the habitat. So that moth lands there knowing that he's going to be invisible. That's really cool. Here's another moth. Blends right in with the tree bark. There he is right there. So again, my composition is giving the bird, the moth or whatever your subject is, complete, you know, respect for the place that they live in. I don't know if any of you have seen this image, but I put this on Facebook and that thing went kind of crazy. And it's not even a good image. There's nothing fancy about the image except there's an owl in it. And I don't know if you can all see that. But I'm going to give you a second because I know it's there. I know where it is. But when I put that online, people were blown away by it. So here's the next image showing you the owl looking at you. All right. Mother Nature is absolutely incredible and I love it. And I've got, you know, lots of images of the bird on a nice branch with out of focus background, but nothing tells the story of an animal or a bird when you show it like this. When you show that you can walk right past this guy and you would not even know it. Okay, I'm moving on. I'm going to talk about shooting perspective, okay? So there are people that like to stand up when they shoot birds on the ground or shoot them on the water, and then there are those that like to lay down and shoot them. And there's a reason for the two, and I want to talk to you about that real quick. So first of all, when you're standing up shooting birds, you're kind of looking down at the bird, and the resulting image is going to be more about the photographer than the bird, because this is how humans see the bird. We see them from 5 feet, 6 feet above, okay? The other thing is because you're shooting down on the bird, you've got more water closer to the lens, which means it ends up being a little bit busier water. Like like a lot more in focus. But if you lay down, the difference is, and I hope you can see this, this is the same bird, right? It's a short-billed dowitcher. Now you're in the bird's world, okay? This is how the birds see each other. And that's what you want to bring to your viewers, is how the birds see each other. The other thing about this is that now the background, because you're lower down, that water is so far away, it renders out of focus. So now the bird stands out better. So I want to encourage you, if you're ever doing any animal or bird that lives on the ground, to get down low and then ask your buddies to help you up, because it's getting harder and harder. But I hope you see the difference. And it is a little bit of work to get down low, but I mean, it definitely is, to me, I feel really strong about it. This is really about the photographer. This one is about the subject. Here's an example of me shooting this curlew out of my car years and years ago. And I always wanted to get that same shot back by laying down on the ground, and I did. I finally got it. You see the difference? I mean, you're in their world. You're down with them. This is how they, when they're running around, this is how they see each other. It's got nothing to do with that, okay? Here's some more examples of it. Here's some people laying down at a pond shooting grebes, but look at the result. You're down at water level. Huge difference, very intimate. This is a couple of years ago, I was up in northern Minnesota, minus 30 degrees, laying down under a sheet, photographing sharp-tailed grouse. But look at the energy when you're, and they're doing their displays. They have no idea I'm there, but I'm laying down in the snow, photographing this bird rather than sitting up or standing. Here's a killdeer sitting on their eggs. You know, we have these nesting all around us here. And people shoot them, you know, as they go by, they're pretty tame. But if you get down low like this, I mean, it's just so much more intimate. And of course, the birds actually accept you better too, because you don't have that human form and you're laying down, they feel safer. All right, we even get in waders, all right, so we can get low to the water to shoot bald eagles. So you can get that really intimate feeling of the bird coming in and the power of that. Here's one of our workshops in Canada. We're photographing ruddy ducks. And we go to the effort of crawling into the water to get the lenses down low so we can get this type of look where you're almost at water level and you're down there. And this ruddy duck is vibrating his stomach to create bubbles to attract the female. It doesn't work. I tried this at a bar. It doesn't work at all. But the nice thing is, this is how the females see the males doing it. So you're bringing the viewer into this bird's world. So definitely worth getting low. Here's one of my clients on a workshop crawling up with a wide angle lens to get low to get this type of scenic shot, right? So getting low is the key to getting into wildlife. Now you can't do this in Africa. You can't get out of the van and get down low in a tiger, but there are many situations that you can, especially with birds on water. Paying attention to backgrounds, okay? I'm going to just go through this quickly. Golden cheek warbler, they only nest in Texas. And a lot of times we'll just take a grab shot and we're happy with it. But you definitely want to try to get your subjects, you know, it might mean that you have to move around or move somewhere else, or just, if you see a bird or a subject perched, definitely move so that you don't have all that clutter in the backgrounds. It's going to make your bird stand out. As you can see, there's less distracting. This has got too many busy white lines and streaks around it. Here's an example. This is my backyard. I'm photographing a blue jay. He kept landing on the same perch before he came down to the feeder. And where I was standing, you can see I got this big old tree behind me. All I did was move 2 feet to the right and I was able to get that. All right, you see the difference? So I want you to be conscious of the backgrounds. I can't tell you how many people show me images and they're like so close to having an image that's 10 times better just by paying attention to the backgrounds. Now, there are examples of when a busy background work, and that is when the busyness is equally distributed around the frame, okay? So this sticks and leaves everywhere, but you can see how it works because you don't have a sudden white blob here or a dark shadow or a big thick branch. It's actually kind of busy equally. Here's another example, summer tanager. You can see there's no dark shadows, there's no white blobs. It's just nicely distributed. Things are up close and they are busy, but it's equally busy. So in those cases, it does work. You just want to watch the ones that have a big black shadow or a white branch or something that really distracts the viewer's eye and steals the attention. Now, here's something that I want to talk to you guys about is that, you know, there's a lot of images I take that I could throw them away, but then if you look, there's actually images within the image. So here's an example of a bald eagle coming down, and we get, like I say, we get many of these, but I clipped his wings. So I would want to look for one that doesn't have the wings clipped, but look at that. There's a crop in there, this beautiful C shaping with the talons out, the intense stare of the bird, and this beautiful soft background, okay? That was in, see if I can go back. That was in that image there, okay? So I'm not out in the field cropped in that close with my lens trying to capture that image. That's impossible. When you see these type of images in documentaries or any time wildlife is documented in anything, it's usually done post-processing, okay? Here's another example of a bald eagle in gorgeous light grabbing a fish, okay? What I don't like about this image, besides it being tilted, which is not an issue, I can change that, but this wing is all folded up. If that had been out like this one, that would have been a keeper. But in that image is this, okay? Showing a vignette of the actual scene of him grabbing the fish. There's the image, right? So look at your images and see if there's another image within them, okay? Here's you know, we're throwing frozen fish to these eagles sometimes to get them to come down. Sometimes the gulls will come and grab them. Nobody's paying attention to the gulls. I'm the only one shooting them. And here's an image of a gull, but when I zoom in, look at this. I mean, you know, it's pretty unique. Yeah, it's a gull, but okay. Gulls matter, right? So, oh, and another tip about the 1/8000 is those shutter speeds is what gets the water frozen. That's what makes these images dramatic. If the water was all blurry, it wouldn't work as well. So freezing the water action works really well. Another thing comes up in a bird photography is like the reflections. Like when birds are on water, you know, when do you include the reflection and when do you not? Because you'll have ducks on the water and maybe they have a beautiful reflection and you can include it in the image, or do you not? Well, here's a rule that will help you. Here's what I go by. So you can see this golden-eye duck here on the left. His reflection is not that good, is it? And then on the right, it's really good. Well, the reason I would keep it is if I could identify the subject by the reflection, I'm going to keep it, okay? So if I can tell without looking at the bird, if I can look at the reflection and tell that's a golden-eye duck, then the reflection is strong enough for me to keep it. Over here, it's just a complete mess. So I'm not going to keep that. I would crop that in tighter, all right? Now, a common mistake people make when they're photographing birds that have reflections is they're looking at the bird and not the reflection. And then you end up cropping it off. So you want to pay attention to that. So that's kind of how you want to frame it. Now, sometimes you may get the whole scene and the birds are smaller in the frame and you get to crop this in afterwards when you get home. Here's how you would crop a bird that has a reflection. Whatever the distance is from the bottom of the frame, I double it on top, okay? So the distance between the head and the bottom of frame, I double it on top. I give more credit to the actual real bird and then just a little bit less, rather than putting them dead center, which we don't want to do, okay? So we just want to move that down a little bit. There's your main bird, but the reflection really still complements the bird. I want to talk to you guys about the value of a good perch. This is something I kind of have a reputation for. I go a little crazy when it comes to perches. So we've got these little birds. So here's a Phoebe. We have these guys, they spend the winter here in Texas. And it's easy to get a bird like that on a big stump. I mean, they'll go on all the time. If you can get them on something smaller, even better. Now, you may not even be interested in getting them on a stump at all. But if you got, let's say you got feeders in your backyard and you send up a perch. All right, the smaller the perch, the better the image, in my opinion, right? So here in the middle, the perch is getting smaller and smaller. This, to me, is the strongest image, the one on the right, because it's so delicate for the little bird. It's versus this. The one on the left is too dominating. It's overpowering. This guy here is much smaller. Now, how do I decide on the size of the perch for the bird? I go by the size of their grip, okay? So if I'm out in the field and I'm after an eagle or whatever perching bird I'm after, I look at the diameter of their grip, okay? And if I have the choice to introduce a perch, then that's my goal. I try to get it down to that. Here's some examples of perches that I've worked with over the years. And not only do you want the size, you kind of want to add something that speaks to the bird. So for example, you know, the quail on cactus. Here's a Pyroluxia from South Texas, they're on cactus. Hooded orioles on these tropical plants. These are pine grosbeaks from up north in the boreal forest on the pine cones. So we try to work with perches that actually belong to the habitat of the bird, right? No, you can't always do that, but this is what we do in our workshops in order to try to get these really gorgeous shots. Now, if you're trying to create a nice portfolio of bird images or even mammal images, but in the case for me, it's bird images. I also want to try to include images of birds landing. So what that looks like is anytime you're doing action, again, this is where your shutter speeds come in. You've got, you know, birds all coming. Here's a flicker coming into a nest, northern hawk owl. We've got a dove about to land on a stump. Now I've got bird seed in that stump, so I know he's coming in there. Screech owl and mockingbird coming into a different stump. We also want to add images of birds taking off. A little easier to get actually, because you're waiting for the bird to take off. Some of them anyway. Here's a snipe getting ready to take off. Ducks will take off. Most of them horizontally will run. Of course, you got some of the ducks that will go straight up in the air, not easy to get. Here's sometimes I get these by mistake. I'm just happen to be firing away and they're taking off and I had no idea. And screech owl leaving the nest box. So a portfolio of images showing birds that are taking off as well. The other thing when you're doing flight shots is that the stronger ones are going to be what we call top shots, which is when the birds turn and bank. Not easy to get. You can't make the bird do it. You just have to spray and pray and hope it happens. But it does happen. And so when you're picking out your images, if you've got a bird that's showing all the top of the feathers, like these guys here, there's a beautiful cardinal, then those are going to be your winners. And the other opposite to that would be adding the bottom shots, which is the bird's underwings. This is kind of more landing. These are puffins coming into the rocks to land and chickadees coming into feeders. Here's a blue jay I shot in my backyard here in Houston, just coming into a feeder. Bald eagles twisting and turning in the wind. So these are all dynamic shots that would add value to a portfolio of bird images. Editors love to see two species the same. So if you like two cardinals interacting, here's yellow warblers, and you know, it doesn't matter what they are. Here's waxwings, grosbeaks playing with each other. Red poles up in Alaska, they fight like crazy. But anytime you can add two of the same image, that's going to add to your portfolio. Then even better than that is if you can add different species together. Not always possible to happen, but it does happen. And you've got a red-winged blackbird fighting with a woodpecker. Here's a little ladderback woodpecker. You wouldn't know how tiny they were next to a dove. That's how small they are. So interacting with two different species. Here's the eastern version of our cardinal versus the South Texas Western Desert version together. That's a good image. Quail and another woodpecker. And then you've got two different shorebirds facing off. Okay, these all add value. Of course, male and females together. Geese, when they're in their winter grounds, they pair up. They find a female, and they find each other. And I shot this at Bosque one night when the sun was going down and the sky was red. And this image here has been sold so many times on Valentine cards. But anytime you can get male and females together, like these bluebirds, pine warblers, you got the indigo buntings, the male and female, and this gorgeous bathing shot of a male and female yellow warbler bathing. It just, I mean, I don't know. I think it's adds a lot to it as well. Editors love that as well. And of course, if you can get anything with adults with young, all right? So we have the loons that we shoot up in Canada every year, feeding the babies. You guys, if you've shot birds, you've been down to High Island, I'm guessing, to the rookery. Here's a family of cormorants. And up in Canada, we have a red-tailed hawk's nest that we shoot every year. And we also shoot these great gray owls. This was taken, I think, last year or a year before with the baby. Mom came in feeding the baby. And then this is up in Canada. No, this is in Alaska with northern shrikes with a nest feeding the babies. So that's really good to try to capture and have in your portfolio. Also headshots, close-ups. Can't always get these in the field, but sometimes you can. So when the loons come up, because their feathers are covered in oil, the water streams off in beads. We got the bald eagle headshot. Owls, because their eyes are facing front, they make great headshots. People love that. And of course, there's the Pyroluxia again. And the reason I included him is you get to see that huge parrot-like bill that they have. Pretty good. Images that show intent. Editors love this too. Or competitions if you enter them. Anything that shows the intent of the bird, like the skimmer, you know, their lower bill is longer than their top bill. So they run that through the water and they feel a fish, they grab it. Little chickadee landing on the berries. Here's the eagle again, showing the intent of coming in to capture the prey. Same thing with a snowy owl. And here's a Cooper's hawk chasing a scissor-tail flycatcher. All right. There's intent in those subjects right there. Territorial and display images for birds and for mammals, right? They all do it. I talked to you earlier about the bubbles that the ruddy duck displays for the female. Can't believe she falls for that, but she does. And then you've got a lot of the killdeers and plovers, they will do that, what they pretend to have a broken wing to try to distract you. It's a great posture to capture. Flycatchers usually raise their crest. Here's a green-winged teal. This is what a green-winged teal does when he wants to bring a female in. He balls up like this and raises up all his feathers, just gorgeous. And then, you know, the chicken family of grouse, they all do these displays. And here's your killdeer. So anytime you can show displaying, it works really well. And I talked to you a little bit about this before with birdscapes. And here we have, you know, putting the big lenses away and trying to capture subjects of birds in a more of a scenic environment, which I love to do. I don't do it enough. Kittiwakes, you know, against the sun. This is at Bosque and Del Apache National Wildlife Refuge in New Mexico, where all the thousands of geese come in at night and you can see the sun going down. We got lucky here one year at my eagle workshop. We had a big storm just passed and then the sun came out and we had this eagle grabbing a fish with a rainbow in the background. So, and here, this is up in Alaska. Oh no, this is in Iceland. The Arctic terns, as soon as you get off the boat, they start swooping at you. So everyone's walking around with a stick. I'm walking around with a camera and I'm firing as it goes. I'm trying to get a landscape shot. And then of course, in Alaska, we have all these beautiful scenery where we photograph the eagles against too. Anytime you can show birds with prey, I'll move through this because I don't want to gore you out, but this happens in nature. You've got animals that, this is what they feed on. If you can show that, it works really well. And then birds with insects. So a lot of times in my photo shoots, especially in workshops, if I've got birds coming to a perch that I know, maybe they're coming to a feeder or they're coming to a nest box or they're coming to a water source and I'm setting the perches up, sometimes I'll find dead insects on my grill in my car or whatever, and I'll leave them on the perch. The birds pick them up and it just adds another level to your images. So you can see all these different images here. With the birds having a little morsel in their beak really adds a lot. And then of course you've got birds that have fish on the shoreline. This is down in Galveston. I just found a blue crab on the sand. I put him in the water, just an inch of water, and let the birds come over and start feeding them. And I sat there and had a beautiful morning with these birds. Kingfishers. Here's the loons again up in Canada. They were trying to feed the baby this big fish. The baby wasn't even the size of the head of the fish. It was hysterical. Dippers, here's kingfisher under the water grabbing fish. And birds singing. That's another thing that you want to try to include. These are all different varieties of birds. I'm trying to move through so I don't keep you guys too late. And then birds fighting. And they do a lot. They fight all the time. And that's another element of their behavior that I think if you can capture that and add it to a portfolio, that works really well, especially if you see them at your bird feeders. They fight all the time, but that's fun to shoot. And birds baiting. I talked a little bit about this. You can see here, you know, getting down low is really key to this, but also, you know, trying to get the shutter speeds up so that you can get the frozen water. Really adds a lot to the image there. And of course, the thing that the editors and competitions love the most is anything that is cute, okay? Which is the babies, all right? So you got a little redhead duckling passing by with a little dribble of drool on his bill, just adorable. Little baby screech owls looking out of a nest hole. Here's a great gray owl baby, probably never seen a human in his life, standing there in front of me. Absolutely precious moment. I think Jackie was on that shoot with me. And we got the loon babies, they're adorable. And the little quail, I mean, these guys are like 2 inches tall and they're running around with their little tiny crests and stuff. So, you know, cuteness, having a cuteness factor to your portfolio is going to add a lot of value to it. So guys, I don't know if I went over time or not, but I just wanted to add my last slide, which I think is appropriate for you guys to all stay safe. And I appreciate your time. And in case you're interested, not that I want to do a shameless plug, but a lot of what I teach, I already have in ebooks and videos, everything that you've heard tonight and many other things. So if you're into bird photography and you want to learn that, just go on my website and then you can click on any of those products and you can see the list of topics that they cover, and that might help you. So I'm going to finish up with that. And how are we doing on time, Jackie? You're all muted. I've got to unmute you. Unmute. Can you unmute? I can't hear anybody. I'm talking to myself. Jackie,
I think we're good. Everybody can unmute themselves.
Yeah, unmute.
Oh, they can. Good. Okay. How do we do on time? Okay, it's almost 6. Good job.
Great timing.
Yeah, sorry I ran fast, but I normally have a lot more. I try to cull it down, but hopefully that helps. And I don't know if you guys record this, do you? Can people come back and watch it and then maybe slow it down and pause it? Okay, good. All right.
I'm not sure if we record just the sound or we get the video in there too, the visuals.
Okay, that's all right. Well, that's, yeah. Anyway, yeah, anybody got any questions at all? Jackie, you need to unmute yourself.
I've got one for you, Alan, and thanks for your presentation. That was excellent.
Thanks, Gary.
I just noticed, I had a quick look at the Nikon lens prices while you were talking. And, you know, if you go from, say, when you're in a long focal length, say 400 or 500, going just even from f5.6 to f4 as your maximum f-stop, trebles the cost of the lens. Is that really for people like you, or should people like us consider that?
Yeah, I had to make that same decision when I was starting out. And obviously I started out with a 5.6 lens or something less inexpensive, same focal length. But just like any hobby or interest, you reach the wall where you realize why. It doesn't matter if you're buying fishing rods or cars or whatever. I mean, there's a reason for it. And when you're buying an f4 lens or a 2.8, the difference is the amount of light that it lets in. The autofocus is so much faster. Now, if you're just doing a bird sitting on a perch and you have a 5.6 lens, let's say a 500 5.6, and I have a 500 f4, our subjects are going to look the same. But if we start doing action, you're not going to be able to keep up because you won't have the acquisition of autofocus.
So just going 5.6 to 4 makes that much difference.
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah. But it also adds a lot of difference in the weight. It's heavier.
Right, right.
That's something that each person has to decide on. But yeah, they're not cheap. But the good news is lenses hold their value. Cameras don't. Cameras depreciate quickly. So if you do spend money on a good lens, you can sell it, 3, 4, 5 years later and make a good amount of it back. Jackie, I can't hear you.
She's unmuted now.
Nope.
She's showing unmuted.
I know. Can you unmute, Jackie, if you want to talk? Because you're muted. What's going on? I don't have the ability to unmute you.
Here we go. Oh, you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you.
But her voice is not coming through.
No audio.
Yeah, there must be something wrong with her audio.
Yeah. Or her. Well, any of you guys, Jackie just said.
Oh, she sent a note saying she's
has
got
issues. Well, we all knew that. I don't know how to help with that. It doesn't give me the ability to unmute you at all, but I'm guessing you're trying to end the meeting. But does anybody else have any questions before I shut up? Well, can I just say thank you all for showing up, and appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks very much.
This was great. I am not a photographer at all, but I learned so much and I enjoyed all of your images. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Alan, Jackie has been singing your praises for several years now, and I really appreciated everything that you presented today. I took a lot of notes. Forward to shooting again soon, and maybe with you one day.
Okay, thanks, Emma. That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, a quick one, Alan. Best places in Greater Houston to take shots within an hour or two drive. You know, get a variety of birds.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously,
Apart from my backyard.
Yeah, well, we're so close to the coast. I mean, you've got Anahuac Wildlife Refuge, is just away for all the marsh birds, and then you've got Bolivar Flats for all the shorebirds, and then if the timing's right, you've got the rookery, especially for practicing birds in flight. The rookery at High Island is fantastic. But here's another little place I used to shoot at, and I haven't been there in probably 15 years, but the big pond outside of the zoo in the winter time, okay? Because all the wintering ducks are there, all the scaup and the teal and the gadwall and the black-bellied whistling ducks. They winter there and they're completely tame because they're used to people. And you can get down low and you can do flight shots. That's a good little afternoon, you know? I don't know how things are now with the COVID thing walking around out there, but it's a place where I've gone and gotten a lot of duck images, and I lay down on the edge there. People look at me like I'm weird, which is kind of good. They stay away from you, but get those. Well, okay.
Right. Any more questions?
Alan, I don't know if you've been down to the Artist Boat's bird observatory down here on Galveston Island on West End. That's open to the public. Artist Boat, if you look up their website, it gives directions to a public area that they've built to give access to people for free.
Is it on Stewart Road?
It is on Stewart Road, yeah.
I think they were building it the last couple of years. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, it's fairly new.
Yes, okay, I have seen it, and they've been hard at work, but I wasn't really down there this year too much because of COVID, so I'll have to check that out next spring. Yeah, that's great. Galveston is a great area, I mean, especially the San Luis Beach and East Beach, if you can avoid the weekends. I mean, it can be great.
And during the spring migration down on the West End, because their Artist Boat has been buying up plots of land that was slated for development, but they're saving it from development. And they're getting, I mean, Carla Clay, who runs it, just tells me stories about just the thousands of songbirds that are stopping on the way through for migration, which is fantastic. So that's it's a hot spot.
Yes. Well, I've been doing songbird migration photography on the West End of Galveston for the past 25 years.
Mm,
And for
yeah.
the past 12 years, I think I've been doing workshops down there.
Oh, okay.
Because
go.
it's a very special place. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nowhere else like it in the world. If you hit the right day, it's incredible.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What's the name of the company that's doing that, Emma?
It's an education company called Artist Boat.
Boats, B-O-A-T?
Yes,
Okay.
and they actually now have their office down on the West End. They a property was donated. Well, it wasn't donated to them. They purchased it. It was a lot of land and a house, and so their office is down there. But they've steadily been just buying up these plots of land there just to keep it all open for the wildlife.
Yeah. One more thing, guys. Tomorrow night, I'm doing a webinar that's an hour and a half. I'm talking about all the tricks and tips that I use to get the shots that I get. If any of you are interested in, you just go on my website. On the front page, a pop-up window pops out with the registration link if you're interested. Since some of you guys seem to like, photographing birds.
Great. What time is that, Alan?
The webinar is at 7. It's 7 o'clock our time, I believe. Yeah. And it's a big webinar, so it won't be an interactive one. It'll be, you'll just be able to watch it, and then they'll give you a link to the recording afterwards, so that if there's stuff in there that you want to apply at home or kind of slow down and watch, you can do that. I just want to invite you guys to that.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate that, Alan, and we appreciate you going a few minutes over. No last questions.
Great. All right.
Okay. I think we'll have to close it out. Jackie's, thank you, and thanked everybody for making the call, and we appreciate the time with us, Alan. Thank you very much for that brilliant education.